and yet we've got to hate fascists, and that's considered perfectly all right. How is that possible? It's because we hate them in the name of light, I guess, whereas they hate only in the name of darkness, and we hate hate itself, and for this reason our hate is better than theirs. And so this kind of goes along with Jody's duality of guilt versus innocence.
Does anyone have any comment, like that line about we hate them in the name of the light? Does anyone have anything to say that is such a cool line? I really like that line.
I'll say something. It kind of strikes me as it's all about perspective. Like, any conflict that's ever happened, there's always been, in our view, a good guy and a bad guy. But in the past, like, the vision of who is good and who is bad has changed based on who won the war. Basically, like, whoever wins is writing it to make it seem like they were the good guys all along. That's why we see America as always being the good guy, when in reality we're probably not the good guy in a lot of our conflicts that we're in. And so, well, conflicts nowadays that we're in. Past, yeah, we can see how we could be. But it's I just find it funny how they say we fight for the light and they're obviously the bad guys when the other people are saying the exact same thing.
I just think it's like awesome saying with the good guys and bad guys and stuff, that in order to have light, in order to have happiness and good things happen, you need to designate a bad guy kind of to get rid of, so there can be love.
And then a second example I came up with was on page 92 when he's talking to Fauché Jr. And Fauché is trying to justify his father's actions, and he said, and Antoine is thinking to himself, how could anyone embroil himself in such a web of lies? Love was what caused it all, love through thick and thin. So how does this duality of light and darkness, or love and hate, give insight into the actions of characters in the novel? Ready?
You kind of have to acknowledge the darkness in order to see the light. But people are so like in search of the light without acknowledging the darkness that they kind of get lost, kind of thing. That's what I think. He's so muddled, and it just goes back to the comparison that we drew with the volcano. You know, it's like everything's just covered in this thick layer of ash that's just like covered, like muddling all his thoughts. You know, it's just covered with lies that you can't see anything that's buried underneath it because you don't want it.
Isaac?
I think when it comes to this story that everyone has their own little light that's surrounded by the darkness. In this case of Fauché, he had a great love for his father, as we could all tell, being extremely in denial of his father's actions. And he's aware of his father's darkness, but because he has this little love and sees his father's light, he can't really bring his father to justice, to a true sense of light, of the real darkness that's surrounding everything in this whole situation.
Anybody else?
So we have one more example, and this one is fate versus chance. So the example that I was coming up with have to do with the dice, actually. So this is page 16 first, is the first mention of the dice when they're playing the game. And this is right, and notice how the dice comes right with the mention of the gunshots that drive the whole entire novel. And then on page 52, we see the dice again, and this is after everything has happened, and it was one of the dice. So I would argue that this is definitely, like, the dice indicate chance, and you kind of see the dice another part, but there's another part where, right, the dice are mentioned again right after, I think it was when they moved the body outside their house. So every time some sort of significant event happens, not every time, enough times to make a note of it, a significant event happens that sort of has to do with fate and chance, the dice come out. So, but what I want to know is how do we separate fate from chance in regards to the assault? Because I would argue they're very hard to separate, and you don't know if it was fate till the end. So what kind of ideas do you have in regards to that?
I'd argue really that you can't separate them. My only reasoning is I never really thought about that before. The dice, right, as the shots kind of happen, what are the chances that it was right in front of their neighbor's house who then dragged it in front of theirs? But I kind of think chance is what kind of affects the pathway that fate is going to lead to consequence. So the chance that Ploeg Sr. was basically killed in front of their neighbor's house activated the chain of reactions that would go from the neighbors dragging it in front of their house and then honestly sealing the fate of his parents and Peter. So I kind of see it that way, that chance doesn't play in everything, but it sets off key events.
So do you attribute driving forces to chance and what you see as fate to happen, or?
I guess you could say that. I see it as chance, kind of fate is the oil, but chance is the spark that lights it to go all the way.
Besides define fate, what is fate? What's the definition of fate?
Fate is destiny, or something that sort of had to happen, something that was predetermined out of out of control of other outside
So
factors.
no matter what,
It's going to happen.
and when you look at Oedipus, correct? No, right, okay, good. So Oedipus, correct, so that Oedipus was fated to kill his father, marry his mother. And it didn't matter really what he did or how they tried to avoid it or whatever. In the end, he was going to end up killing his father, marrying his mother. So, big difference between the idea of what's going to happen is going to happen to us regardless of what you do versus everything's just up for grabs. The chance determines everything. There's no either point of action. Doesn't seem to be meaning.
So look at it. It's like you have fate or destiny, and like you have a specific end that you're going to, like you're fated to an end. But then chance, I don't know, it's kind of just like evokes more of a random term of happenings, but I think it's more of just like we have events throughout our lives that are eventually kind of going to guide us either way. Like that man could probably die on another street, and Anton would probably somehow get to where he was ending. So it's like just through the chances of things, it just kind of formulates us into the fate that we're supposed to have. But I don't think it really matters depending on the actual effect. I think we're always going to kind of have universal correction.
If you believe in faith, then you have to believe in God or God.
Yeah.
I've heard of some atheists.
Yeah, I would agree with that because I always thought that religion has a big power and it has some higher power that says
Yeah, I don't see how you can have faith without higher power. Because somebody has to be saying that's what's going to happen to you.
Can you have chance with a higher power?
Could there be a higher power and?
Yeah.
I think so.
Or
Yeah.
vice versa.
I don't think the idea of chance excludes the higher power. But I think the belief in faith, that there has to be a determiner of what happens. I think it's important to, in your mind, as you're thinking about yourself, to really try to think about these two things. You know, what does it really mean to be fated versus chance? Because again, this is World War II existentialism, grandeur.
I don't think they can be separated because fate is chancy. Like it's if something is going to happen and the stage isn't set for that to happen because of other things, the stage will be set. So it'll be kind of random how it gets set, and it will seem just like chance because it's not probable that, or like there's just this luck that it seems that makes it get set this way. So it appears that it's chance. If there is fate, something's fated to happen, it'll look like chance that is getting that ready to happen.
So it looks like it, but it's not.
Yeah.
Right?
I was going to say that the element of chance, or the fact that we see the dice popping up a lot, kind of indicates that this is fate maybe in this instance, because, well, what are the chances that Fake Claude was killed on that street at that time? What are the chances that he was dragged over near Anton's house? What are the chances that all that happened, but it happened anyway? Well, why? And I feel like throughout the novel it just keeps going, well, what are the chances that this happens? What are the chances they get attacked on their way to Amsterdam? And it all happened. And so that kind of indicates, well, the chances were kind of against Anton, but it all happened anyway, so fate kind of plays some element in that.
I think it's kind of the opposite, that chance, like, you have no control over it initially, like when you roll a dice, it can land on whatever number it wants to, but what you do in response to that, the consequences to what you have, kind of fate and kind of choose the direction that you're going to go from there. And so you might not have control over all the consequences, but there's like this little space in between where you do have control over it.
I think we can separate I agree with Caitlin. I think we can see it like how we can see how bigger chances by looking at the character's actions, and if they're trying not to do something, but in the end they always end up to that place. And I also agree on saying that I think it's chance until we can see the ending of the book, to see what the ending is, and we determine if they all see the ending.
We're trying to see it coming to go back to this side. So, do we have any quick answers? Because this is going to be, how does duality, the usage of duality in this book, like, what kind of insights does that give us? What is the purpose of using it, basically?
I think it's kind of like, there's like some saying that says that you can only experience happiness, you can only experience true happiness if you experience sadness. I think it's kind of the same thing as you can only appreciate one side of the argument if you know the other side. I think that if there's 5 or 6 different perspectives, then it gets hard to agree with one. Because you're like, well, I agree with this part of this, but I agree with this part of this, but this person said this right. Whereas with duality, it's a lot easier to kind of say, I agree with more of this than this, so this one's the right one.
So relate that back to the book. Like what kind of insight does that give us to the characters?
I think for Anton and Fake Jr., that you can only, because they went through very similar experiences, in fact they both lost their fathers, you can see how Fake's kind of out for revenge in a certain way, where he's very committed to the politics and to rebelling against the people and things like that, whereas Anton isn't, and distances himself as much as possible. I think if you had 4 other people that had gone through that and all deal with it differently, then it's hard to say, oh, well, this one's the right way to deal with it. Whereas when there's just 2, it's easier to kind of take a side because there's less sides to take.
Caitlin, sorry. Marvel.
That's kind of you asked.
Austin.
I'll pick another one, Austin.
Monica Lobster.
You get 2. Come on.
Caitlin Baker.
Well, I agree with Sarah on a lot of things she said, like, you can only really appreciate whatever you're presented if you know the other side. So, like, as Anton thought, you know, the Nazis, or, like, what Fake's father did was wrong. Fake still had to appreciate his father because it was just his job. And then afterwards, you know, his family, his mother and his sisters were sent into, like, a time of hardship, and he had to participate in it. So they come from two different lives, and you can only really see that if they're put next to each other in the instance where they were both in his apartment. So it just allows you to see both sides of things instead of just having a narrow side to one.
Okay, ceremony of presence.
Do you want me to ask a different question? On the topic of guilt and innocence, how does Anton, like, what are his perspectives of guilt and innocence in the assault that happened?
Well, I think it's as far as, like, what happened when he was 12, and I'm not at his house, which was young. I think that, I don't know, I've never seen him guilty. He knows who did, like, who caused it to happen. Blame for his family dying, like he told him himself, but I think he was told the same. I don't know exactly what to say.
Okay, so I think that because we can't really establish a clear set of who was guilty, of who wants to blame, we kind of keep some innocence within him. Like trying to deny that everything happened, he's trying to keep the innocence that he had when he was 12 and still had his family and stuff. Anyone else who hasn't spoken already?
Yeah.
Oh, saved by the bell.
So, really quick,
What?
this is for your enjoyment.
Best movie ever.
Yeah. Guys,
Hot Rod.
with Anderson.
What's the best movie?
Oh my goodness.
What does it have to do?